Okay, so we're holding page Ayin Zayin in Shara Yichud V'Emuna, Perek Beis, second chapter in Tanya, of Shara Yichud. The Alter Rebbe in chapter 1 taught us a message based on a pasuk in the Torah in Tehillim, La'olam Hashem Dvorcha Nitzav Bashamayim. Forever, God, your word stands firmly in the heaven. And then he brought the interpretation and explanation of the Baal Shem Tov, that this refers to the words of Hashem's sayings, Asara Maimoros, the 10 utterances, that everything exists with the word of Hashem, and that it's a constant reality in all of material, physical world. That was the Nakuda, the main point of chapter 1. Now, in chapter 2, the Alter Rebbe wants to prove this idea logically. Okay? In other words, in chapter 1, he bases it on a verse in Tehillim. So if you're a believer, Hillel, you just believe what it says in Tehillim. But what if you're either not a believer or you're someone who questions everything? So Alter Rebbe says, no problem. I'm going to prove it to you using logic. That's chapter 2. Okay? Let's learn. V'hinei mikan, from here, from this idea of God being sustaining the world every moment, tshuvas, and not just that he did it once and he left the world and to run on its own. Mikan tshuvas haminim. This I'm giving you a logical explanation. The Alter Rebbe says it's a response. Tshuvas means it's a response. Haminim, to the heretics. To which heretics? To those that say that the world today runs on its own. Yes, God is the creator, but once he created the world, he took a vacation for 5,784 years. We've been coasting from the koyach that he put into the world 5,784 years ago. Says the Alter Rebbe, Tshuvas HaMinim, I'm going to give you guys, minim, you heretics who believe this because it is heretical, I'm going to give you a logical explanation. And he says, furthermore, V'gilu shayrish te'usam, and I will share the root of your mistake. And I think it's important, these few words here, to realize how the Alter Rebbe deals with heretics. You know, so many people dismiss them. You're a heretic? Goodbye, good luck, get out of here. You're nothing worth, you know? The Alter Rebbe says, no, you're a heretic. But I'm going to share with you a message that hopefully you no longer will be a heretic. And I know that you are coming from a heretical place which is lodged in your brain, in your logic, because you came up with a thought that you think the world can exist without God's ongoing sustaining of the world. And I will show you the root mistake in your thinking. That's fascinating. The approach. You see what I'm not even getting yet to the etzim, to the meat and potato, right? I'm getting not just you see his attitude, how he applies his Hasidic, his Tanya, his philosophical thought about Hashem as a way to elevate and to rewire the thinking of heretics. Not dismissing him and say, get out of here. Get out of here. Don't come in. He says, you're a heretic? Can we talk? He says, yeah. Okay, listen to me. Let's go on. Ba'ashgocha protis. In addition, there are 3 things here heretics, these heretics, Isser, have a problem with. 1, Kiyum ha'olam. I want you to write this down if you can, or at least lodge it in your mind. Kiyum ha'olam. The first thing is the existence of the world as we have it today. They say the world runs on its own based on the energy God put into the world at the beginning of creation. That's called Kiyum, existence ha'olam. Now, when you have that position, it leads to another issue. And that is, the kofrim, they deny b'hashgacha pratis. That's number 2. Divine providence. Right? To believe, Moshe, to believe that this thing that happens now is divine providence, you have to believe that God is here now. Not that God was here. If you believe Hashem was here and he left us and the world's running on its own, then you can argue what happens is not divine providence because he's not here. So the whole idea of hashgacha pratis, hashgacha, supervision, Avram, supervision, the belief in God's supervision is inherently connected to the belief that God is in the world, which means in the first thing, kiyum ha'olam. So if they deny kiyum ha'olam, point number 1, existence of the world as it exists, that God's in the world today, subsequently, the Alter Rebbe says, kaifirim, they deny point number 2, which is hashgacha pratis. Point number 3, they also deny uva oises u'maifsim ha'Torah, the signs and miracles of Torah. If you don't believe in hashgacha pratis, surely you're not going to believe that A, B, and C, when it happens, it's a miracle. Why? Because, again, you don't believe God is in the world now, so you don't believe that what happens now is divine providence, so therefore you don't believe that when a miracle does occur, it's a miracle. It's all nature. So here's a very important point, that these are the 3 things that the Alter Rebbe is going to try to rewire the thinking of the minim so that they start believing, number 1, that God is in the world. Subsequently, everything is hashgacha pratis. And thirdly, there is such a thing as miracles. And why is this also a fascinating point, Chaim Zev? Why? Because this whole idea of believing something is a miracle, you have to believe that God is here. You can't believe, it's impossible to believe that something is a miracle if you don't believe God is here. If you don't believe God is here, then what do you mean he made a miracle? Nature is nature. He created a world 5,784 years ago, and it's coasting. And the coasting consists of the sun, the moon, the earth, and the mountains, and the stars, and everything is just going fine and dandy. A miracle means it changes nature. It's the shattering of convention. To believe in the shattering of convention, you have to believe that there's a maker, a higher maker, i.e. God, a creator that's doing it now. So now the Alter Rebbe is going to continue talking about this idea. Let's see. And he says, Shetoyim, these heretics, mistake b'dinyonon hakoizev, with their false, koizev means false fantasy. Shemedamim, by them comparing Maaseh Hashem, the acts of God, Oiseh Shemayim v'Oretz, who creates the heaven and the earth, and they make the comparison L'Maaseh Anish v'Tach B'Loisav, to the works of man and his tachbulos, his schemes. And what do they say? This is their argument. For example, when a craftsman makes a vessel, shuv eina keli tzorich lidei hatzoidif, they say the vessel doesn't need, the keli doesn't need any longer the hands of the craftsman. It was made. Ki af sheyodav musuloki semenu, because for even, they argue, when the hands of the craftsman vacate, leave the vessel, v'hoylech b'shuk, and he goes on a stroll to the market, hakeli kayem b'tavnisa v'tzalmoi, the vessel remains in its imagery and its form, mamish. The keli that he made in his garage, and he goes away, and it's, oh Henry, after 20 years, he comes back 20 years later, he opens the garage, and he takes a look at the pottery that he made. It's exactly the way it was. What do they argue? Kasha yotze midei it's exactly the way it is in its image, in its form. Kasha yotze midei hatzeitiv, as it came originally from the craftsman. So they argue, kach, so too, medamim hasichlim ha'elu, these fools. Alter Rebbe uses heavy language here. These intellectual fools. He's not making fun. Hey, you're a bad guy. He's saying intellectually you're foolish. Kach medamim hasichlim ha'elu. So do these intellectual fools compare Ma'aser Shemayim va'aretz, the act of heaven, creating heaven and earth. Because heaven and earth is different, and he's going to explain soon how. Ach, toch maris einayim. Toch means it's smeared. Maris means their vision. Their vision is smeared, einayim, of their eyes, their intellectual eyes. Hahevdel agodl, says the Alter Rebbe, the great difference between man's act and the schemes of man. Shehu yesh mi yesh. Yesh mi yesh means taking one material, one yesh, one existing material, and changing its format to another yesh, to another existing format. But you didn't take a nothing, an ayin, and make of it a yesh. It's called yesh mi yesh. Look further. Shemishane hatsura v'hatmuna. You take the one material, you change its form and its image. Mitmuna, next page, page 154. Mitmunas chatichas kesef, from it being a piece of silver, litmunas kli maise, to become litmunas kli lemaise. Litmunas kli. Stop there. You're taking a piece of silver, you are forming it, and you're making a silver menait or a silver becher or whatever else you're doing. So what have you done? You've only changed miyesh liyesh. However, comparing it l'maisa shemayim v'aretz, which is shu yesh mi'ayin, the act of creation of heaven and earth, is something from nothing. We didn't have a shemayim and a aretz pre-creation. And we'll stop here. Tomorrow we'll continue with another mashal. But just to clarify this nekuda, and that is that the idea of yesh mi yesh and yesh mi ayin is no comparison. So you heretics, you're saying that Hashem is no longer here. Why? Because you're basing it just on, as an example, like the craftsman who makes a keli and he goes away and exists on his own. He says the problem is you're making your thinking is wrong, rudimentary and fundamentally. Why? Because the creation is yesh mi'ay and not yesh mi'yesh. That's the first explanation why their logic is intellectually wrong. If you had to sum it up in 2 words, right? So you would say that the Alter Rebbe's counter-argument to the heretics is, your argument is correct if the world was yesh mi yesh. But since the world is yesh mi ayin, ex nihilo, something from nothing, therefore the comparison is wrong. Yes, Moshe.
Hillel, I'm sorry, I think Hillel was waiting first.
Okay, Hillel.
Forgive me.
And also he's a little older. Go ahead.
Yeah, but we go by beard length in this year. I wanted to just ask. I remember learning a medrash once, commenting on the different names of man, Adam, Ish, and Enosh, and I think there are 4. Or 5.
Four. The fourth one is Gever. Fourth one is Gever. Go ahead.
Okay. So I just wonder if you comment on the sort of the implications of him choosing Maaseh Enosh as the description of man in this chapter.
It's a good point, and you really hit on something, but it's not relevant openly now. So let me get to it another time. I believe you hit my record, my memory. I believe Hasidus does address that. So I do want to respond.
I have seen things and I don't remember.
Right, right. So let me get a chance to give me a week. Hopefully, I can get some to let you know.
And just one other related question.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering from the Rambam correctly, it was Dor Enosh that began the generation of Avodah Zarah. Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm remembering that right too. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. I believe so. The Rambam. Yeah. Moshe.
Okay.
I just want to ask real quick, and maybe we can talk about this tomorrow. When we talk about answering a heretic, today, the types of people that the Rebbe had to answer then, and what was happening in the Jewish world, particularly the Ashkenazi world in Europe, etc., the massive upheaval of the 19th century, meaning the 1800s, early 20th century, etc. Today, it seems that the people, like, the definition of a heretic, I ask often myself, how many people really would fall into that category today, as opposed to people who are being really, even though they're positing ideas that are very foreign to Yiddishkeit, probably most of those people would fall in the category of Tinuk Shanishma.
Right.
So I'm just asking, I'm putting on the
You're saying they don't make them like they used to.
Well, look, I think if we were to ask the question, are there still people that don't believe in God? What would you say, Moshe?
So I deal with that, it comes up a lot. It comes up in very family members, or not family members, but people connected to family.
Right. Okay, and what's the answer?
I think it's that, I don't think it's so much that people don't, okay, yes, they don't
The
believe
answer
in
is
God.
I don't believe in the same God you don't believe in.
Okay.
Okay, that's sure.
Thank you. And that's the meaning of today.
Yes, okay, fine, yeah.
That's the meaning. No, one second. Just 1 more second. I'll let you. Those are the heretics of today. Meaning to say, the nekuda, the underlying issue is a belief in a God that's real today in our lives. And I'm telling you, not only for hardcore heretics, which maybe are out the window, like you say, maybe today the heretics are more in the frum world. Oh.
Okay, that also.
Okay? When on October 7th came, and you're telling me that frum people didn't say, hey, Hashem, what's going on here? I believe plenty of frum people said that. It doesn't mean they threw away their tefillin and the yarmulkes. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is addressing here too. So when you say, Moshe, yes, I understand where you're coming from, what you're saying. So I would say those type of heretics are maybe not as much, although there are plenty of people who don't believe in God, and that's why they just do what they want. But
If I may, Rabbi,
What?
if you were to ask people their definition of God, they were like, no, I don't believe God. So do you believe that there's a force in the world? And if you start using other terminology that is not so...
in your face.
Right. Same question. It's the same question. Who wants to be more religious? Nobody's going to raise their hand. Who wants to be more spiritual?
Oh, everyone raised it.
Everybody wants to be spiritual. It's really, we have a disconnect in language that people, the concept of God sitting on a throne, an old man with a beard who's there to punish, and this is what people grew up with, and they threw it away because
Yes.
it's nonsense, and they haven't replaced it with anything more sophisticated.
Right.
Yeah.
Yoni, what did you want to say? Yoni, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just been bringing this up because of Moshe's point, but listen, today it's not as prevalent as, let's say, 30 years ago, 40 years ago when I grew up, with the Reform movement and the conservative movement. But I had friends that were conservative Reform because I grew up in Sheepshead Bay, and my next door neighbors were Reform and conservative, and the difference when I would speak to them, and I wouldn't even debate them, but I just would want to know what the difference is between an Orthodox Shita and Reform and conservative, was exactly what the Rebbe says today. Because what we learned today, Tanya, about how having hashgacha pratis is the difference. We're talking about a different kind of heresy. We're talking about, I believe in Hashem, but I don't believe that he's in charge of every day-to-day, actions, everyday things. Where Reform would say, I don't know, I don't really believe in anything, It's like the Reconstructionists. They don't believe in God. They don't really have a God in their agenda. It's all, Jewish, so we're traditional. And Reform, they maybe today it's a little bit different, but I think the conservative, the Reform today, which today is, it's merged because there's no customers. But I think that's what the Rebbe's touching on. The difference between the two, the Reform and conservative.
I appreciate everyone's comments, but I'll say it again, what I said to Moshe, and that is that I am not concerned today about the minim or what Yoni, I'm more concerned about our own belief in God, our own communities, and there's a lot there. Trust me. So many of the young people that are rebelling, that are leaving, this is an ikr for them that they haven't yet explored or understand or disagree with. Okay? Because if you come to understand these three nekudas, kiyam ha'olam, hashgacha pratis, and oisem oisem b'Torah, it's impossible not to be a frum yid. Impossible. You have to reject these three things, or one of the three, and most importantly, the first one. So when you say, God's, and what Yoni said is exactly it. If you don't believe that everything's hashgacha pratis, I can do what I want. I can do what I want. Less din for less dying. There's no judgment. There's no judge. Just do whatever you want. Have a field day, and this is seeping into us in our communities. Everyone chooses and picks and does what they want. It's a free for all, and it's not a free for all. So when we talk about Das Torah, which in Chabad we don't use that, but the Litvish world use. Or we talk about going to a Rav, or going to a Rebbe, or going to a Mashpia, or going to a rabbi, and listening, and not jumping from one to the other. I'll play games. I'll take this kula and that kula. It's all part of this chapter. If you believe that a Rav, that when he gives you a psak din, is Hashem talking to you, you'll listen, and that's it. And whether the result is this way, that way, you do it. But if you don't have that emunah, then you just start picking and choosing. And what does Chassidus say? That's because the emunah is b'makif. The emunah is not internalized. So yes, Moshe, the language of the Alter Rebbe sounds and it addresses, hardcore heretics, which he needs to. But if you, as this is said, if you start thinking about it, it's much more expansive to everyone in their situation, and it's very relevant today. And that's why I would say is one of the reasons the Rebbe said that that when you teach, that you're allowed to teach non-Jews Shari Yichud Ve'emunah compared to the first section of Tanya, because they're not allowed to learn to become a ger. You're not allowed to learn Torah. Why are you allowed to learn Shari Yichud? Because Shari Yichud is one of the 7 principles of faith in one God. It's proving faith. And if you think about it, as far as that's concerned, God being here is relevant to everyone, not just to a Jew who puts on tefillin, who has 613 mitzvahs and 7 mitzvahs that are Rabbanan, but every single human being. Chevra, great talking. We'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem. Have a great day. Sei gesund. Again, Mazel Tov and wonderful seeing everyone. Thank you.
Mazel tov.
Bye
Take
bye.
care.
Bye
Mazel.
bye.